They said humanity was too small to matter, just another fragile species scattered on a blue world, tolerated by the Galactic Council only because Earth bowed its head and kept quiet. But then, the Council did the unthinkable. They took a child. Not a soldier, not a rebel, a child. Her life ended beneath the cold decree of alien arrogance. And in that single heartbeat, something ancient stirred. Across Earth, silence fell. Grief turned to fire. And in the shadows of forgotten vaults buried beneath oceans and mountains, engines older than the stars began to hum once more. The galaxy had forgotten Earth's first war. They had forgotten why humanity locked away its greatest fleet. But grief has a way of breaking chains, and fury has a way of calling back ghosts best left sleeping. The Council thought they could kill one child and silence an entire species. Instead, they lit a fire that would burn across the stars. Because when you take what is most innocent from humanity, what awakens in return? The child's name was Leora. She lived in a quiet colony city on the rim of Earth's protectorate, a place where steel towers rose against alien skies and laughter echoed through narrow streets. Humanity's frontier life was not easy. Fragile domes held back hostile atmospheres, and every sunrise carried with it the reminder that humans did not truly belong here. Yet somehow they made it feel like home. Leora's father, Jalen, worked long shifts maintaining the colony's water processors. Her mother, Sarah, kept a small cafe near the docks, where traders from half the galaxy would stop for warm bread and strong coffee, luxuries that made humans unique even in the void. Leora herself was only 8, her world filled with chalk drawings, school lessons, and the thrill of running too close to the docking bays just to watch the starships land. To the Council, humanity was insignificant. To her parents, she was everything. And perhaps that is why what happened next cut so deep. Life in the colony always felt fragile, balanced between hope and unease. Neighbors whispered when the patrol ships of the Galactic Council passed overhead. The Council claimed to keep order, but their gaze always felt colder, heavier, more dangerous than protection should feel. Still, people told themselves that as long as Earth obeyed the laws of the stars, nothing would threaten their children. But there were cracks, small incidents, trade disputes where humans were cheated and silenced, soldiers who laughed when locals complained of missing supplies, reports of entire settlements punished for daring to protest unfair taxes. And through it all, the Council's arrogance grew. Jalen noticed it when he worked. The alien inspectors no longer greeted him as an equal. They barked orders as if he were less than machinery. Sarah noticed it too. Fewer customers came from the Council worlds, and those who did looked down on her human recipes as if they were beneath galactic culture. But still, they endured. That is what humanity does best. They endured because their children deserved laughter more than fear. That was the promise of the colony. Fragile, yes, but hopeful. A spark of Earth's spirit carried into the stars. And Leora, she embodied that hope. Her laughter was infectious. Her joy softened even the hardest workers. She would chase after the landing lights of ships and declare, with childish certainty, that one day she would fly among the stars herself. No one in the colony could have guessed how dangerous that hope would seem to the Council. Because the truth was simple and terrifying. The Galactic Council was afraid, not of armies, not of weapons, but of what humanity might become if given enough time. One child's dream was, to them, a spark too dangerous to allow. And so, while the people of the colony clung to ordinary days and ordinary joys, shadows crept closer. Ships with black insignias began docking without warning. Council envoys lingered too long near schools, watching with calculating eyes. And in the silence of the stars above, something waited, a judgment, cold and merciless, descending upon one small life. The storm had not yet broken, but its winds could already be felt. Parents pulled their children closer. Workers walked a little faster through the streets. Even the laughter of Leora seemed sharper, brighter, as if defying an approaching darkness. Fragile, hopeful, human. It was in these moments, before the sky itself shattered, that humanity's true strength was forged. Because only when something precious is threatened do we realize the fire hidden in ordinary hearts. And when that fire burns, the galaxy trembles. If this world already has you on edge, make sure you're subscribed, because the storm that's coming will change everything. The first blow was not loud. It came in whispers. Council soldiers arrived under the guise of inspection, their boots clicking on steel floors, their cold eyes sweeping through human streets. They carried themselves like predators among prey, every gesture a reminder that they held power and that humans lived only at their mercy. Fear spread quickly. Shops closed early. Children were kept home from school. The laughter that once filled the colony was swallowed by silence. And then the whispers became commands. The council declared the colony guilty of resource violations. Their evidence was thin, forged, designed not to prove guilt but to justify punishment. Jalen was dragged from his work, beaten for daring to protest. Sarah's cafe was seized, her oven shattered beneath armored boots. Still, the people endured. Still, they clung to the fragile hope that if they obeyed, if they bent their heads low enough, the storm would pass. But the storm did not pass. One evening, black ships descended. Their banners, etched with the council's emblem, blotted out the stars. Soldiers marched in formation through the streets, rifles gleaming. The colony gathered in the square, trembling under the weight of alien eyes. And at the center of it all, a sentence was delivered. The council demanded a sacrifice, not a resource, not a building, a life. When they dragged Leora forward, her parents screamed. The crowd erupted, a wave of voices pleading, begging, bargaining. But the council's envoy, a towering figure cloaked in silver, only smiled with cruel detachment. "This child," he declared, his voice cold and resonant, "is the embodiment of your defiance. Your people dream too loudly. You reach too far, and so she will be made an example." The execution was swift, too swift. A flash of light, a small cry, and silence so heavy it seemed to crush the very air. The galaxy expected humanity to break that day, to bow lower, to accept its insignificance. Instead, something else began. Fear gripped the colony first. Mothers clutched their children. Fathers stood frozen in disbelief. Neighbors wept openly. The council soldiers reveled in it, the power of terror. They thought fear would chain humanity forever. But fear, when pushed too far, changes. At Leora's funeral, the colony gathered in defiance of curfew. No soldiers could stop them. Candles burned in the darkness, each flame a trembling star of grief. Jalen, his face bruised, his voice raw, spoke words that echoed beyond the crowd. "They thought killing a child would silence us. But they don't understand what it means to be human. We bury our dead and then we rise." Anger spread like fire. Quiet at first, smoldering. Workers muttered in factories. Traders clenched fists in silent protest. Even children carried the rage in their eyes. The colony no longer bent. Beneath the council's weight, it trembled with restrained fury. The council noticed. Patrols doubled. Curfews tightened. Beatings became executions. Yet still, humans whispered to each other in the dark. Stories surfaced of vaults buried deep under Earth itself, sealed long ago after humanity's first war among the stars. Ships older than any living memory. Weapons too powerful to be trusted. Most dismiss them as myths. But in grief, myths become hope. And hope is dangerous. When the Council sent warships to orbit Earth itself, demanding unconditional surrender, humanity's leaders stood before the world and refused. Their voices shook, but they spoke with unity. "We will not kneel. Not for our dead. Not for our living. Not for our children yet unborn." Fear shifted to anger. Anger hardened into defiance. Across Earth and its colonies, resistance began to bloom. Small at first, a Council supply depot mysteriously destroyed. Patrols ambushed on remote worlds. Communication lines cut. Each act was a whisper of rebellion, a spark against the void. The Council responded with cruelty. Entire settlements burned. Civilians executed in public. Billions were reminded of their fragility. And still humanity refused to kneel, because something had awakened. It began in the depths of the Atlantic, where ocean pressure hid ancient vaults. It stirred beneath Martian mountains, where red dust concealed forgotten hangars. It hummed beneath Antarctic ice, where no living human had walked in centuries. The ancient fleet, Earth's first and greatest legacy. At first only fragments. Engineers stumbled upon dormant engines glowing faintly with life. Pilots heard voices in their dreams, whispers of ships older than empires. The Council dismissed these as superstition, but then came the first awakening. A single vessel rose from the sea, larger than any modern ship, its hull etched with symbols older than recorded history. The water boiled as its engines roared, casting shadows across the coast. And on that day, humanity remembered. The Council panicked. Their fleets mobilized, surrounding Earth, demanding answers. But fear spread among them too. They had studied humanity's history. They knew whispers of a war so violent, so catastrophic, that Earth had buried its own weapons to prevent self-destruction. Now those weapons were waking. Cliffhanger beats fell one after another. A patrol ship vanished near. Titan, rumors claimed an impossible shadow swallowed it whole. On Mars, Council soldiers reported seeing abandoned hangars, filled with ships that should not exist. On Earth, storms surged unnaturally, as if the planet itself was trembling with something ancient stirring. The galaxy mocked humanity as fragile, but fragility is deceptive. Glass shatters, yes, but shards cut deeper than steel. And now, humanity is a galaxy of shards. In council chambers, alien leaders scoffed, but their eyes betrayed unease. One ambassador whispered, "If the fleet returns, no power will contain them." Another silenced him. But the fear remained, because vengeance is not rational. It is not predictable, and when a species carries vengeance in its blood, no empire is safe, and so humanity stood on the edge of its greatest choice: to kneel and survive as broken slaves, or to rise and unleash a power the galaxy had prayed would never return. The answer came not in words, but in action. As dawn broke over Earth, people looked to the sea. The sky thundered, the oceans parted. More ships rose, colossal shadows, engines screaming with ancient fury. One by one the fleet awakened, each vessel a monument to humanity's forgotten might. The galaxy had taken a child. Now it would face the parent's wrath. And this was only the beginning. If humanity's defiance is giving you chills, hit that like button, because the battle that's coming next will shake the stars themselves. The sky over Earth burned with fire. Council warships, vast and cold, descended in disciplined formations. Their hulls shimmered with shields that had crushed dozens of species before. Beams of energy lanced downward, striking oceans, cities, forests, reminders of what awaited those who dared resist. And then the sea answered. From the Atlantic's depths, the first of Earth's ancient fleet rose higher than the clouds, water cascading from its titanic hull. Engines older than empires roared to life, shaking continents. Its weapons awoke with a sound. That was less machine and more thunder, a chorus of fury echoing across the planet. The Council had numbers, but humanity had something older, something forgotten. And as the second, third, and fourth ships ascended from hidden vaults across Earth and Mars, the galaxy realized what it had unleashed. The first clash was brutal. Council destroyers, sleek and efficient, swarmed like wolves. Their beams scorched the sky, tearing at the rising giants. One ancient vessel faltered, shields flickering, before a blast ripped through its hull. Humanity's cheer turned to silence as fire consumed the ship. Thousands died within, but even as it fell, its sacrifice mattered. Because in those final seconds, the dying crew aimed their weapons at the Council flagship and fired. The explosion ripped through shields that had never broken before, carving scars across alien steel. Humanity wept at the loss, but the message was clear: we will not die quietly. Fear turned to fury. Every screen across Earth broadcast the battle. Children clung to their parents, soldiers prayed, leaders shouted orders. And through it all, a single truth bound humanity together. Unity was their weapon. Pilots volunteered for suicidal runs, darting in fragile fighters to draw enemy fire away from awakening leviathans. Engineers worked without pause, repairing ships mid-battle as sparks and blood mingled on steel floors. Civilians, unarmed and powerless, still stood in city squares, refusing evacuation, chanting humanity's defiance to the sky. And the fleet answered. One by one, ancient weapons fired, not simple cannons or missiles, but beams of energy that split the night in half, tearing through Council warships like paper. Ships designed to rule the galaxy faltered under firepower older than their empires. For the first time in centuries, the Council bled. But victory was not without cost. The Council, desperate, unleashed their superweapon, the Judicator, a vessel so vast it eclipsed the horizon. Its presence blotted out the stars, its weapons charged with the fury of suns. Humanity's fleet, for all its power, was still outnumbered, still fragile. The Judicator fired once, and two ancient ships disintegrated in fire and silence. Despair whispered across Earth. Could even ancient fury withstand such might? And then came the choice. Jalen, the father who had lost his child, stood at the command of one awakening Leviathan. He was no soldier, only a man who knew the engines of his colony. But in that moment he became something greater. He looked at the burning sky, at the Judicator preparing to fire again, and gave the order no parent should ever have to give. All power to the core. Ram the flagship. The ship's crew hesitated only a breath. Then they obeyed. The Leviathan surged forward, engines screaming with impossible force. Council ships swarmed to stop it, But human fighters flung themselves into their path, sacrificing themselves to clear the way. Shields buckled, hulls shattered, but still the ship roared onward. Inside, Jalen whispered his daughter's name. The collision lit the sky brighter than dawn. A shockwave tore across the battlefield, shredding the Judicator in half, ripping Council formations apart. The explosion could be seen from orbiting moons, a second sun blazing in defiance. Earth shook. Humanity wept, and the tide turned. Silence followed, not the silence of defeat, but the stunned quiet of a galaxy realizing its mistake, against overwhelming numbers, against cruelty and arrogance. Humanity had not only survived, it had struck a wound no empire could ignore. Council fleets faltered. Some ships retreated outright, captains unwilling to face the fury of a species that had buried weapons powerful enough to end empires. Others fought on, but their confidence was gone. And above Earth, the ancient fleet gathered, scarred, burning, but still alive. Engines pulsed like beating hearts. Weapons glowed with fury yet unleashed. Humanity, once dismissed as fragile, now stood as a storm. The battle was not over. Humanity's fleet was still outnumbered. Losses were catastrophic. But in that moment, in the ashes of sacrifice, one truth had been proven beyond denial. The Council could kill a child, but they could never kill humanity's spirit. And as the smoke cleared, as the galaxy watched in terrified awe, one image burned into history. A single surviving Leviathan, its hull cracked. Its engine sputtering rose into the light of a blood-red dawn. Upon its prow, the human flag waved, torn but unbroken, defying the void. It was not a victory, not yet. But it was something more powerful. It was a promise. If Jalen's sacrifice gave you chills, hit that like button right now and stay with us. Because the legacy of this battle is only beginning. The battlefield was quiet at last. Not because the war was finished, the Council still lived. Their fleets scattered across the stars, but because, for the first time, they dared not press forward. The wreckage of their might floated above Earth, broken and burning, testament to a truth they had never believed possible. Humanity had stood. Humanity has endured. Humanity had struck back. But the cost was written in fire and ash. Of the ancient fleet, nearly half lay shattered across oceans and continents, their wreckage glowing like fallen stars. Cities bore scars of bombardment. Towers collapsed into dust. Families wept for sons and daughters who had thrown themselves into impossible battles, knowing they would never return. And in the silence between victories, one name carried on every whisper: Leora, the child whose death had awakened the storm. She became more than a memory. She became a symbol. Every burned ship, every sacrifice, every act of defiance was tied to her. Humanity did not fight for conquest. It did not fight for power. It fought because one child's life mattered, and if one life mattered, then all did. Across the galaxy, the Council's grip loosened. Their arrogance fractured beneath the weight of fear. Other species, long oppressed, watched the broadcast of Earth's defiance and felt something they had not known in centuries: hope. If humanity could stand, then so could they. If humanity could wound the Council, then perhaps the Council was not immortal after all. The galaxy had changed, forever. And so too had humanity. No longer the overlooked newcomers. No longer dismissed as fragile children of a single world. The humans who survived that night carried scars, but within those scars burned a light the galaxy could no longer ignore. They were survivors, builders, fighters, dreamers. They had paid in blood. But their voices now echoed louder than the Council's decrees. On the shores of the Atlantic, where the first Leviathan had risen from the sea, a memorial was raised. Not of generals or leaders, but of a child. A statue of Leora, hands outstretched toward the stars. Her face carved with innocence and hope. Beneath her, etched in steel, were words that would echo through history. They thought killing one child would silence us. Instead, they gave us reason to rise. And in that rising, humanity had found its place. Not as conquerors, not as slaves, but as something new, something undeniable. A people who refused to kneel, no matter the cost. The galaxy trembled still, wars yet to come, sacrifices yet to be made. But one truth had been carved into the heart of every world. Humanity was here. Humanity would endure. Humanity would fight, not out of hatred, but out of love for their children, for their future, for the fragile sparks of hope that even empires could not extinguish. And so the story ended, not with silence, but with a question that would echo across the stars. If one child's death could awaken such fury, what will humanity become when it fights not out of grief, but out of destiny? If that gave you goosebumps, share this story right now and subscribe for more epic HFY tales of humanity's unbreakable spirit.